there were none, and then the following week there was one, and then every single week the numbers roughly doubled. And throughout July, throughout June, throughout July, throughout August, September, I checked the traps last week. There were over 9,000 in one trap. There were over 9,000 spider-winged Drosophila in one trap from 1 week. And so what happens is these insects, they'll still keep active until they get killed off with the frost, with several frosts. And what happens is we believe they're overwintering somewhere. Somebody was saying, I was at a meeting just a few days ago, it seems like a long time ago. I was at a meeting on Thursday in Geneva, New York. They're thinking that a few of them will overwinter in crawl spaces of houses, or in sheds or greenhouses, and it's the adults that are overwintering. But the numbers will get up way high this fall and then drop down to really low numbers over the course of the winter, and then they'll build up again next year. And so that's certainly what has happened this year. And anyway, there was a drop-off right here on September 24th, and I'm not sure what that is. And it could have been that it just got too dry. This insect really likes high humidity, and really in the Northeast, or actually along the whole coast, is probably the worst place for spider-winged Drosophila because the humidity is so high. So places where will have dry periods, they really don't have as much of a problem. And so maybe this time in September, if we had some real dry weather or something, I'm not sure. So this is just, this trap goes up to, I think it was 2,600 I had, and this is just to show that throughout the year, I mean, the scale of this chart is so crazy because it's going up to 3,000, so even though we're catching some here, you can't even see it, and then it just goes way up, and then, as I said, there was a crash there, but the numbers are up here, and then if I put last week's capture of the 9,000 on here, that would be, up past the ceiling. It's pretty crazy what they're still doing.
Heather,
yes?
Has anybody predicted if that chart's going to shift to earlier in the season because they just got here? Like, if we have a warm winter, could you have a huge population over winter, and then instead of starting at 0 catching in traps, you're up to like 500, and now it's doubling, and that shifts more to July?
In Michigan, they started catching them in May, and so that very scenario was kind of happening. So they started catching them in traps in May, but I don't think it got any worse than it was here.
So it still should peak in the mid-August, late August. It won't move to like early July.
Right. I mean, so last year we had an incredibly mild winter,
right.
And so if that scenario was going to happen, it seems like it would have happened this past year. Okay. So, but again, there's still so much we don't know. Okay. And yeah, so so even people that are trapping can kind of find them all winter long, like on a warm winter day, and they'll find a few. And then they just seem to not do anything until they start really building in July. So yeah. Why?
So some of the adults can live longer than their life cycle?
Well, see,
or are they laying eggs and...
No, they're probably just spending the winter as adults. And so, yeah, when we say they have a 2 to 9 week lifespan, except for the overwintering ones that can live even longer. But I think a large number of them are getting killed off in the wintertime.
Do you think if we had some really good snowstorms, those guys that are living through the winter might get killed?
The problem with snowstorms is that usually if they're underneath it, then they're fine. So probably if we had no snow and really cold temperatures, but even so, I mean, the ones that get into people's crawl spaces or into garages or whatever, there's going to always be some, I'm afraid.
Can we trap our way out of them?
Well, perhaps. I mean, perhaps we can help save save the blueberry crop with doing some mass trapping. And there's been information from Japan that they were saying they were using in some places like 60 to 100 traps per acre, and maintaining these traps and kind of keeping the numbers low. Yeah. What I was finding in Rhode Island is there were several growers that didn't spray at all, and they had short seasons, so they had more early season things. But if you can keep the blueberries really well picked, if you have a lot of people that are in there harvesting all your fruit, you know, they might be taking home a few larvae or a few eggs with them, but there's really not very many complaints. What raspberry growers, a fall raspberry grower was telling their customers was only pick the soft, don't pick the soft berries, only pick the firm ones and eat them real soon or freeze them right away. And don't try and keep them long. So I think it's going to be, you know, if we are doing late season crops to try to educate the public, maybe not educate them too much, but just kind of say, you know.
I was surprised I heard nothing on the news or anything else. I think once I heard one little bit about it.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And the guy that was at this meeting from New Jersey says that come the middle of November is when their frozen berries from last year come out, and they're very worried about getting, you know, truckloads rejected because of Spiderwing Drosophila in the frozen berries. And so I'm afraid we might hear more very soon, but I agree. I thought that this would be all over the place,
Yeah.
but, you know, people, I don't know.
Winter moth was, it was all over the place, winter moth.
But, and that's affecting them because they're seeing it, you know, it's all right around them. This thing is small, they're not seeing it. If they are freezing their berries or eating them right away, you can kind of get away with it. So, and, yeah, let's see what. So this is just showing the comparison. This was the trap we were using last year and with the red, and we really weren't catching as many as would be expected using that combination trap of the bait, of the vinegar and the grape juice. But there's yeast that works much better as a trap. And you might say, well, so what if you're catching one? If you're catching 9,000, you don't need to catch 9,000 in one. But what the idea is, if we can use baits that can catch things early, we can know just when they're getting active and just when to apply insecticides against them. So there are, Rich Coles has been working with this yeast bait. Remember, it was yeast that he had first found it in a yeast trap that he was using last year. So he was proposing we use this standard yeast bait of, you know, a tablespoon of yeast and 4 tablespoons of sugar and 12 ounces of water. But the yeast, it's cloudy, it's
ferments
you can't,
too.
yeah, it ferments, it gets really gross. So, but at URI, Steve Alm had a couple of his students, he was asking me, what should I do anyway, he had his students set up a yeast trap right next to my trap. So I had 6 traps set up at our East Farm, blueberry planting and along the woods, and they went and set up a trap right next to mine. And so, but what they did, so they had my regular trap and with the vinegar and the grape juice bait, but then they put this little vial, this little jar with this screen lid on top to keep the yeast in there, so it attracted them, but nothing got foul in there, and you didn't have to go looking in that. And so they went and changed that every week. This worked out really well. So we didn't set this up until the beginning of August, but they routinely caught like twice as many fruit flies as I did. So it'll be very interesting to see what will happen next year. You know, can we catch them earlier, and so we know just when they'll be a threat. So it actually right now it seems like we might be about the same number. Like right now, their trap doesn't seem to be any more attractive as mine with just the regular vinegar and grape juice. So we'll see. But the idea is if you can catch them earlier in the season, you can spray. You'll know you'll be able to time the spraying better. So and then you know to catch those 9,000. Actually, 9,000 is like this is a 50 milliliter. Graduated cylinder, but when I got my 9,000, it was 120 milliliters worth of stuff in the trap. So what I've come to is measuring the volume of my trap captures, and then I take a 1/4 teaspoon sample and count all the Spiderwing Drosophila in there, and then remeasure to see how many milliliters I've taken out, and to kind of figure out how many I've gotten, because I'm not going to count them all. That's all there is to it. So, but fruit sampling also is a good thing to do, and so I had one grower who didn't want to spray, wasn't going to spray, and he's like, I don't think I have them. And I was like, I don't believe you, because I've been catching flies at his place for about a month. And so he collected soft berries for me and gave me soft berries, and within a day or so, I could tell that they were all maggoty. But he's got a very small patch, probably half an acre. He's got a lot of customers that come, and they just came and would pick everything out of there. And he didn't spray all season. He was done early, you know, I think middle of August. He finished picking in the middle of August. And he was satisfied with his control without spraying at all. But as I said, he has a big client base, a lot of customers that come and really pick him clean. So even though his soft berries look like this, he was doing okay. I went to another grower in the end of August who was he was spraying weekly with malathion, and he's like, I don't have any spotted wing Drosophila. And then I looked under his bushes and there were all these dropped berries.